6 proven strategies to get rid of the dad bod and yes, that stubborn fat. Listen, when you become a dad, you have a lot of different challenges based on your schedule, based on changing physiology that make it very difficult to stay in shape. But getting sloppy with our physique is not the example we want to lead for our kids. And what we need to do is first have a rational understanding of what exactly changes when we become a parent. And then second, what strategies do we need to apply? And how do we make this so fitness flows with our life, not against it? Because one of the biggest issues that many people have is they operate with the same plan that they had when they were 5, 10, 15, 20 years younger, hoping that it's going to help them get into great shape. The reality is you have to have fitness that flows with your lifestyle, not against it. So as a 35-year-old business owner and a father, these are strategies I have used time and time again over the last 15 years as a coach with my clients to help them get into world-class shape without living in the gym. So first, understand this. Research has shown that men can experience a 20 to 30% drop in testosterone until 6 months after the child is born. This comes from a study, the longitudinal evidence that fatherhood decreases testosterone in human males that was published by Gettler et al. In 2011. And so the reason for this, well, we're not always quite sure, but when we consider what happens with our lifestyle, once we have kids, it makes sense. We have more stress, we have less sleep, and there may even be some aspects where pheromones are playing a role. One of the ideas that's out there, one of the theories is that when you become a father, testosterone levels drop, so you may not be as likely to go seek out another mate, and you kind of settle into that home care type routine where you're taking care of your child. Again, the evidence is mixed as to why this actually happens, but when you factor in both that pheromone component and what changes in your lifestyle, it completely makes sense. And so when we have lower testosterone, these factors impact our workout quality, our drive, our motivation, recovery, and how well our body's actually going to be able to take down and break down the food that we're having. Naturally, when we have decreases in testosterone levels, it's going to make it easier for our body to add fat and make it harder for us to stay strong and lean, especially if we are not training as consistently as we were before. So strategy number 1 is to pull back on your training, but stay consistent. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you can't stay consistent with it, you're going to give your body an inconsistent signal, which is going to make it very difficult for it to actually adapt to the response that you're creating with the workouts. A lot of people look at workouts as something that burns calories, but the reality is what we're after is creating a physiological trigger from each individual workout that's going to create a change in our body. Taken, for example, the goal of resistance training is to, guess what? We want to progressive tension overload. We want to build strength, want to build lean muscle, build connective tissue, build bone. That's a signal that we're sending. Versus just burning calories, that happens more as a byproduct. And so what we need to do with our training is we need to be able to pull back. And in many cases, I find that when people go 3 to 4 days per week and just commit 30 to 40 minutes to a workout, it's going to have plenty of an impact to help you get into great shape, even with your schedule being more hectic. When we're not recovering fully, when we have less sleep, when we have more stress, when we are trying to figure out this new parenthood thing, it's important to remember that our recovery is going to be compromised. Your ability to get results is a delicate balance between your nutrition, your training, and your ability to recover from the stress of your training. And so when that ability to recover, that recoverability goes down, we need to be able to change the other variables, your nutrition and your training, to coincide with it. We need to have a synergy between all 3 of these factors. If there's not, you end up working hard, but not quite getting the results that you want because your physiology cannot quite recover from the hard work that you're putting in. So if we're doing 3 to 4 workouts per week, 30 to 40 minutes, I typically either prefer an upper-lower training split or a total body training split. If you're going 3 days per week, I would recommend that total body option. We're training major muscle groups each and every single workout and major movement patterns, so squat, hinge, lunge, press, pull, even weighted carries. If you're going 4 days per week, then I would recommend an upper-lower training split. So one day training your upper body, next day lower body, so on and so forth. When you're doing these workouts, they don't have to be marathon sessions because frankly, you can't recover from them if you're not getting any sleep when your child is waking up multiple times throughout the day. So what I recommend is working up to 1 to 2 hard work sets per lift. As an example, let's say you have 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps on a bench press. Do 1 or 2 warm-up sets and then gradually increase. That last 1 to 2 sets should be close to muscular failure. We have to have the intensity high enough so we can actually elicit a response in our body, create progressive tension overload to be able to build or preserve lean muscle. When you're setting up these workouts, I typically recommend about 4 compound exercises within a session. That's going to be the best bang for your buck, and then 1 isolation movement. If you want to see a workout that corresponds directly with these particular training parameters, make sure you go check out the comments below and the links, and you will see directly what one of those workouts looks like. Now, some of the rationale behind this. First, we want to do shorter, more frequent workouts. more than just creating a physiological response, is going to keep you consistent and build a habit. You see, when life changes, when we have more work, whatever it is, a lot of people fall off by the wayside and they think, I'm just going to get back into it when life gets a little bit less crazy. I don't know about you, but my life keeps getting busier and crazier. And so what we have to do is understand that life is not going to slow down. And when we develop and build habits, when life is crazy, well, it's going to be exponentially more likely that we can actually hold on and build that habit regardless. And so instead of waiting for time to be perfect, what we need to do is adjust maybe the training frequency or the volume based around what we can do now and commit to that process. Because when we build that habit, it's going to be more likely to stay, especially if we build it when we are busy. In addition, when we train more frequently, and this is the reason we like to do an upper-lower split or a total body split, every time that we train, we are creating muscle protein synthesis. We are creating a trigger inside of our body that's saying, hey, guess what? We need to be able to build some more tissue to be able to overcome this workout that we are completing. And so when we train muscle groups more often, we are creating more frequent increases in muscle protein synthesis. This is really important, especially if you're a natural guy. When you do a workout, muscle protein synthesis stays elevated for 24 to 36 hours, meaning if you train your chest on Monday, that protein synthesis is done by Wednesday. And so if we can train a muscle group with less volume per session, but more often, guess what? We can trigger that muscle protein synthesis more times, which can lead to more growth, better muscle retention in the case of fat loss. So when we look at it overall with your training, when we're training muscle groups more often, we're going to have frequent training, which is going to help first build a habit. It's going to increase muscle protein synthesis. And as a result, it's going to help you lose fat and build muscle more effectively. Finally, if you are doing like the same exercises consistently and building strength within it, you're also going to get stronger, which then indirectly is going to help you build muscle and lose fat. It seems like a win, right? The next strategy, we want to automate and simplify your nutrition. When you're a parent and you have a million decisions going on, you're not getting a whole lot of sleep, the more decisions you can automate, the simpler life becomes. And if you can automate the right decisions, you can eat in a way that serves your body and your goals and your family without needing to make decisions when you are already fatigued. When we are fatigued, that is when we tend to get reactive. That is when cravings happen. That's when you find yourself elbow deep in cereal, wondering what the hell happened. So a few things I found incredibly beneficial for the vast majority of my clients. Personally, I did 16/8 intermittent fasting. The reason I like to do this, well, if we can pigeonhole your calories during a certain time frame, that inherently makes it easy to create a calorie either maintenance or a deficit. In addition, when you do intermittent fasting, in many cases, after you get past the initial beginning stages where you're hangry, you want to chew off your arm, it takes 7 to 10 days for your hunger signals inside your body to reset, but then you gain better control over your hunger. You realize hunger is not an emergency. And so when you can step back and realize, hey, I'm hungry here, but I don't need to go for a snack right away, it gives you a lot of self-control that helps you stay in alignment with what your goals are and lose body fat. Second thing I did is use a meal delivery service, and I still use it today. In fact, when I have to make fewer decisions around food and can eat the same foods on repeat, especially when they're healthy, it makes getting and staying in great shape incredibly easy, especially when I have a lot of demands on my schedule from work and my personal life. So if you have a meal delivery service nearby, use something like that where you can automate potentially what your lunches look like. And so if you use something like intermittent fasting and then you use a meal delivery service, you've taken care of, well, you're not really eating breakfast, and then your first meal of the day is automated. You don't have to make any decisions around food for a huge chunk of your day. And when you don't have to make as many decisions, you're gonna have more willpower to be able to make the right decisions, even when stress is a bit higher. If you're local like I am here in Charleston, I use something like Project Lean Nation, absolutely bomb meal service, but other services like Trifecta and Factor Meals can also be a great option. Also mentioned is eating the same foods on repeat. Now, this doesn't always sound like the most fun, but you know what? It's really fun getting in incredible shape and maintaining it. So when you can eat the same foods on repeat, you're going to be able to have better compliance. And realistically, if you reflect back on what you eat on a regular basis, you probably eat pretty consistent meals. You go to the same restaurants, you probably order the same thing, you get the same things at the grocery store. It comes down to making better decisions with the foods that you're eating on repeat, and that simplifies the overall process. Again, when you're busy, when you're overwhelmed, when you're a new parent especially, you have so many decisions going on that compliance is the difficult piece. So when you can automate some of the things that you're doing, you'll be in a much better position. Let me give you a quick example. Some things what I'll do, overnight oats. So a scoop of oatmeal, so a cup of oatmeal, half a cup to a cup of fruit, and 1 to 1.5 scoops of protein. Boom, mix that up overnight. I'll make 5 Tupperwares, throw that in. Very simple for me to eat incredibly healthy without having to do really anything. It takes 5 minutes and I've got 5 meals. Meal delivery service, if you can make something like that work directly for lunch. And then dinner is very simple. It's just a combination of different lean meats, frozen veggies, rice and potatoes, coming up with different variations of it. I highly recommend getting some spice spice blends, you can use a website like Flavor God, and you'll be able to have a bunch of different seasoning blends where you can make any type of protein, any type of vegetable, or any type of carbohydrate fit a different flavor profile. And then you can eat, again, similar foods on repeat, but have them taste different so you don't get too bored. The overall approach here that we need to take with nutrition is simplify and execute. When you can make fewer decisions around food, it becomes easier to make even better decisions overall. And when you do this consistently, especially in a high stress environment, it's going to give you more self-control and, frankly, a bit of a nutritional buffer so you do not eat your feelings when you're not getting any sleep at night. Next strategy, we have to fight decreased insulin sensitivity. When we are getting less sleep, when we have higher stress, those have both been shown to negatively impact insulin sensitivity. So what is insulin sensitivity? More or less, it's how well your body can break down and use nutrients, specifically carbohydrates. If somebody has better insulin sensitivity, they can generally eat a higher proportion of carbohydrates without getting body fat, use that additional carbohydrate directly as fuel for their training and for building lean muscle than somebody who has poor insulin sensitivity. But when we are not getting enough sleep, when we are stressed out and not getting our training dialed in, well, our body is going to have decreased insulin sensitivity. That makes it much harder for us to be able to go through some of those foods, especially the highly palatable ones that tend to be around the house, especially when you're looking for something that's convenient or you're a new parent and people happen to bring you food. At least that was my experience. What do we need to do to improve insulin sensitivity? First, consistent training. When you are working out consistently, your muscles are working like a sponge. So think if you have a sponge right now and you squeeze it and put it in water. What does it do? It absorbs, right? That's essentially what your muscles do with the sugar that is in your bloodstream. And so when you're consistently exercising, when you're moving a bit more, you improve that insulin sensitivity and your muscles kind of work as a scavenger to pull that glucose that's in your bloodstream out and use it more effectively. So it's absolutely crucial, especially if food quality can be a little bit hit and miss and you're not getting as much sleep, that you exercise and you stay active to be able to improve insulin sensitivity. In addition, of course, yes, eliminating junk food, that's going to be the biggest thing. Eliminate a lot of the refined sugars, especially knowing that your cravings are going to be a little bit higher when sleep is compromised. If you're going to be having higher carbohydrate meals, try to make sure that they are on days where you're working out or near a workout specifically. I know when we had our daughter, my wife and I, we would plan ahead of time who's going to do a workout when we'd have more of a higher carbohydrate type meal, that tended to work better. And again, this comes down to the sponge analogy I referred to before. When you work out, your body's going to have improved insulin sensitivity, particularly around a workout, meaning your body's going to be more likely to handle those carbohydrates. As a side note, if you're somebody who tends to have larger meals on the weekend or any particular day in particular, it's going to be better to strategize and have your workouts on those particular days. So when you tend to overconsume calories and or carbohydrates, then guess what? Your body's going to be primed to be able to take advantage of that because you're going to have improved insulin sensitivity directly from the workout. In addition, intermittent fasting is going to help you control for calories, and because you're eating less frequently with an intermittent fasting style protocol, you're going to have fewer spikes in insulin throughout the day. So again, intermittent fasting is a great tool in cases like this because you can gain better insulin sensitivity as a result of both the calorie deficit that you can create, in addition to eating a bit less often and therefore creating fewer spikes in insulin. Next strategy, you need to improve your sleep. Yes, this is not always going to be in your control. It's about having the effort and taking these steps that can improve your sleep versus obsessing with the actual outcome that happens. You have to be process focused when it comes to improving your sleep because you can't always control the outcome. In fact, you have to be process focused when it comes to how you eat and how you work out because you can't always control the rate of the progress that you make. You can only control the inputs that you're putting in, and time will take care of itself. When it comes to improving sleep, this is obviously the thing that most of us struggle with more than anything. I remember getting up multiple times, especially in the early stages of when my daughter was born, and like some of those days you were mentally talking to yourself like, holy shit, I hope I can make this. Eric, you will survive. You will make it through. And that's the way that it goes. It's just part of the deal, right? You know, with kids, it's something you're gonna have to deal with. So here are some helpful strategies. I like the 10-3-2-1 strategy. Here's how this works. 10 hours before bed, cut caffeine. So if you go to bed at 10 p.m., try not to have any caffeine past noon. The half-life of caffeine will stay in your bloodstream, will negatively impact your ability both to fall asleep, but also negatively impact deep sleep. In addition, if you are firing caffeine up too much and it's driving anxiety up, especially in the mid-afternoon, that's a pretty good sign that your overall caffeine intake is probably a little bit too high. Personally, I've dealt with that before, and that's not a fun spot to be, especially if you feel like you're cranky and anxious directly around the family when you want to be present and the best version of yourself. So just a word for warning if you tend to get a little bit heavy on the caffeine intake like I do. 3 hours before bed, try to cut out food, try to cut out drinks. Again, let's say that you are going to bed around 10, 7 o'clock, try to pull back directly off of the food and of the drinks. A couple of reasons. First, when our stomach is still digesting food, especially a lot of it if you have it close to bed, it's going to negatively impact your sleep quality. You will notice a profound difference actually in terms of deep sleep. I know that's something I notice whenever I track my Oura ring and I have food too late. In addition, when we are sleeping, our body is actually going through the process of kind of defragmenting our brain, helping consolidate memories. Our organs are replenishing themselves and rejuvenating. And so if we're constantly having our body still work on like the digestive process because we're eating a massive meal like an hour before bed, it's going to negatively impact all of these physiological processes that go inside, right? So that's obviously not going to help. In addition, if you are drinking way too much water before bed and you got to wake up and take a leak in addition to getting up already, that is going to be problematic. So try to front load your water, try to give yourself 2-3 hours ideally from your last meal before when you go to bed. That's going to improve your sleep quality. 2 hours before bed, try to stop work. If you catch yourself ruminating at night, thinking about all the things you have to do tomorrow, you might even need more time before this. I know as a business owner, there's always something to do. There's always something to build. There's always something to fix. And if I let myself, it can be very simple to just quite literally forego sleep and work. If that happens, of course, everything from a physiological perspective is going to be downregulated. And so at the end of your workday, if you can set a definitive stop time, I always like to grab a pen and write down a list of everything I need to do for the next day. We call this the reverse alarm. I'll set an alarm 15 minutes before the end of the workday, write everything down, and then it is all laid out clearly for me. So when I wake up the next morning, I can execute right away. I don't have to spend time wondering, hey, what should I do today? I already have a plan and I can act. Finally, 0 stands for 0 times you're going to hit snooze. Just kidding. Sometimes you might hit snooze. You're going to get woken up. You've got little kids. Like, let's not bullshit here. The reality is, though, if we can focus on improving our sleep with a 10-3-2-1 strategy, it's going to be absolutely crucial to changing your dad bod, getting strong, lean, and jacked. Now, something else I want to highlight here as well. There was a recent Chicago sleep study that looked at what happened when people were getting 5 hours of sleep or less over the course of 2 weeks versus 7.5 hours of sleep. You know what they found out? People who were getting 5 hours of sleep or less for that 2 weeks had a 50% reduction in fat burning and a 50% increase in terms of muscle loss, even while in a calorie deficit. That's crazy. Dad bod or not, new parent or not, if you want to be able to maximize the hard work that you're putting in the gym and what you're doing in the kitchen, sleep is absolutely crucial because it supports every single physiological process from hormone levels to cognitive function, discipline, and your ability to stay on track. Strategy number 5, what do you need to do for cardio? So when it comes to cardiovascular exercise, if you're weight training 3 to 4 days per week, that is going to be your foundation. What I would recommend doing is getting a step goal of 8 to 10,000 steps per day. Now, personally for me, when our daughter was born, right in the middle of COVID, couldn't really go anywhere. Fortunately, I could put her in a stroller and go for walks. This was not an issue at all. But one thing we have to consider is like basic levels of activity. Getting a step count up is one of the simplest ways to have a low stress method to burn a ton of body fat. And 8 to 10,000 steps per day should not take you a ton of time. Throw in a podcast, throw in an audiobook, take some calls, do some meetings, whatever it is that you have to do to get outside, you're going to feel and perform so much better. One of the things that we realized as well, besides the fact that our daughter was great at sleeping directly in her stroller at this point, but when we made it a habit of going for walks, of getting her outside consistently throughout the day, like even if she wasn't sleeping, she was in a lot better mood. And you know what? For kids, habits are not taught, they are caught. And so when you're making it an active piece of your lifestyle from the moment that they are born, or they're really little, like they're going to notice that. And they're going to start doing things like that more consistently. Now, with my daughter being a toddler, she likes to go for walks just like we did all the time when she was very little. Why? She sees that's what mom and dad are doing. And like the best thing we can do for our kids is model the healthy habits and behaviors that we want them to adopt. Frankly, I think if we're not, we're doing them a disservice. And I know that probably rubs some people the wrong way or that might be offended, but the reality is, if we want healthy kids, if we want a healthy family, if we want them to look, feel, and perform their best, we have to be the ones who lead that by example. So find a way where you can fit that activity in, where you can push a stroller, carry your kids, park further in a parking lot, get physical activity into a space where they see what you're doing and that they get used to that themselves. Overall, it'll help you directly with the stress, upset kids, and you're setting the habits and the rituals that they're going to need to be successful themselves. And ultimately, that's the best thing that we can do as parents. So ultimately, when it comes to deconstructing and getting rid of that dad bod, if you want to be able to lose that fat and keep it off, we have to understand that your physiology and your schedule are going to shift. Because those things are making a shift, your overall approach to health and to fitness should shift alongside of it. Otherwise, when you have an incongruence about what your expectations are, how hard you're working, and everything else in your life changing, you're setting yourself up for failure. The reality is, fitness should improve your life, not consume it. And you can't demand perfection from yourself when life gets hectic if you're not giving yourself any grace or doing something that's going to be practical and sustainable. But if you focus on the concepts that we talked about here, making your training practical for your schedule, training frequently, if you dial in your nutrition and automate habits to behaviors, if you focus on sleep hygiene and do the best that you can, even when things are not perfect, and you stay active and start to build those habits into your lifestyle so your kids model them, you will be able to go from dad bod to shredded, and you're going to set the great example that the rest of your family needs by leading by example. If you found this helpful, all you got to do, drop me a 5-star review and drop me a comment. Let me know what you want to hear more of on the next one. Thank you so much for joining. I'll talk to you soon. Did you find this helpful? If so, pound that like button and hit subscribe. Now, if you want a free copy of our Chiseled Muscle Cheat Sheet, the no BS way to help you lose body fat and build lean muscle in 90 days, make sure that you go to the description below and download your free copy. Any questions? Drop them in the comments, and can't wait to see you with the next video.